Alright folks, this is my little quick video about how to upgrade your Kia Rio LX to a cruise control car. I found out that all the electronics are included. All you have to do is switch out the switches. Here's my new switches here. The new wiring harness. And I'm probably going to pull the steering wheel because I've got a steering wheel puller. It's supposed to make it a little bit easier. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is to remove the negative battery lead. That's basically just to keep the horn from honking and keep it from throwing any codes when you take the airbag out, so that you don't have to have the dealer reset it or use a machine to reset the code. Okay, the next step is going to be to remove the Torx screws to remove this airbag and airbag cover. And I've just got this little handy T tool, and that is a T40 bit. And the screws, there's one right here on this side and one right here on this side. And I believe you just have to loosen those two screws. Alright, after you've got the two Torx screws loosened all the way out, the airbag component should come out just like so. You've got to lift up on these orange connectors to unplug the airbag. Okay, I'm going to pull the steering wheel nut with a 21mm socket. Alright, I use my steering wheel puller to pull the steering wheel. Very easy. And we just pull the steering wheel off. We'll go ahead and disconnect these connectors here. Okay, you don't have to pull the steering wheel. I think you can get this all on. But the reason I pull the steering wheel off is because it's much easier to get to all these screws. Especially, there's one that's hidden up in here that's really hard to reach if you leave the steering wheel on. Okay, by actually loosening these 6 screws, we can actually lift this thing off. It actually makes it easier to get to these other 2 screws that you see here. You can reach them through this hole, but it's very hard, so that's why I take the steering wheel off, because it's a whole lot easier to get to those 2 screws. And after disconnecting the back from the steering wheel, we can easily remove the old harness. These are those Torx screws that screw into the airbag. I just wanted to show you those because you don't want to lose those. They can fall out. Make sure they're in there when you put it all back together. Okay, all we have to do is remove these other screws so that we can take out the old switches and put the new ones on. And after we've removed those screws, we see that this whole assembly will come out by itself. Now we're just going to take those 2 screws, this one here, and we're just going to put the other pieces together right now. Okay, this is the new switches, and I've put these 2 screws in there, and we're just going to slide it back on there, run the wiring harness, and we're close to done. Okay, I've gone ahead and put it back on. Gone ahead and put my wiring harness on, and I understand that you can get this backwards, so just make sure it's correct before you get everything else on. I went ahead and put these 2 screws in, and then when I put the back on, I'll run the wiring harness in it. Alright, got the cable routed, got the back on, screws back in. It's new buttons. Alright, I figured that I would go ahead and plug everything back in. I reconnected the negative battery cable because I want to test it out before I put everything back together and make sure I've got the cables routed correctly and plugged into the right places. Alright, and apparently I've got everything plugged back in correctly because there's my cruise light now comes on. My trip button works. My volume works. I haven't reconnected my Bluetooth phone. Well, it's still on there though. So all that stuff works. So I've got everything plugged in correctly. Now I'm going to just put the steering wheel nut back on and put the airbag back on, and we'll be done. Okay, so we got everything all back together. We can see that when I press the on-off button, it works. Cruise comes on. I'm going to go road test it. Alright, you can see it works like a charm. Thanks, Kia, for making a plug-and-play car.